Hey everybody, welcome back to Medicare Agent IQ. This is Raul Gonzalez.
And I'm Oscar Ibieta.
This is Raul Gonzalez. So, I don't know.
You to speak like that the entire time?
I guess so. So yes, I am Raul Gonzalez, and this is Medicare Agent IQ. And so again, kind of the reason that we do this podcast is really to help agents out there. I get emails pretty regularly from people who are out there and they don't have a whole lot of local support where they can, get a lot of questions answered and things like that. So our goal here is just to help other people be successful. And so we've actually seen a lot of that. We've got to follow up and hear from other agents who've been listening to the show and hear good things. So it's very cool to hear. But today what we're doing is we're going to continue our podcast that we were doing last week on really making this your best year yet. And so just some more ideas, more things that kind of we're thinking about to help you to be the most successful that you've ever been this year.
Yeah. Last week we thought we were going to get it all in last week, and it turns out that we didn't. So we just decided let's make this a two-parter. So we're just going to pick up right where we left off last time.
Which is?
So last time we left off, we were talking about just developing your knowledge, enhancing your knowledge, your product knowledge, knowing the product that you're selling. And so transitioning into the next point that we've got for you here today is building strong client relationships. So Raul, you were actually, before you started this agency, you were captive agent for Humana, and you thrived. I'd say it was probably your biggest strength, right? You had a lot of organic referrals. Is that the right term I'm using there?
Yeah, or just
self-generated.
Self-generated. The majority of the business that I did when I was an agent at Humana was self-generated. There was one agent who did more than me, and he had been there since like Medicare started or something. But he's long he had a long tenure there, and so he stopped receiving leads altogether. I'd say for the most part, toward the end, I wasn't getting a whole lot of lead support, and that's part of when you start thinking about and kind of weighing. And if you work as a captive agent right now, and if you're kind of weighing, should I leave? Should I stay? One, feel free to reach out to me. I'm happy to offer. I mean, obviously I did it and made it. But when I was over at Humana, I started to weigh the amount of self-generated business versus the referrals. I was like, I've pretty much figured this out. I don't think I need you guys, right? Versus leads. I'm sorry. Yeah. Versus leads. I'm like, I figured this out. I don't really need you guys anymore. And so I would say that's probably one of my strengths. And with regard to how I talk to agents, it's one of the strengths I have in helping others to be successful in this business. And so just a couple of strategies. First of all, at the end of every appointment, I would say to people, hey, I'm going to be your agent from now on. And the way that I want you to kind of picture me is the very first phone call that you make. Now, this will come with the warning, right? You're going to get a lot of phone calls, but those end up paying off quite well. I mean, so I tell them like, look, if you didn't get your medications or something like that, feel free to call me first. Now, I'm going to be completely honest with you, and this is how I'd always tell them. I'm going to be completely honest with you. There's going to be times that I tell you, hey, remember I told you that I can't help you with everything, but I still would like to be your first call. And the reason is that, if I don't want you calling the wrong 800 number, I don't want you getting caught in loops. So I'll give you the right number also of who you're supposed to be calling. Maybe you're calling about the mail order pharmacy and you call the number on the back of your card. That's not going to get you to the right place. And so you've wasted time. So make me your first call and I'll be able to help you and at least guide you and navigate you on the things that I can't help you with. Now, there's some things that I might be able to help you with off the top of my head. If you call and say, hey, I'm looking, where was that place that I could go to the gym? I might know off the top of my head, hey, look, there's that Gold's Gym right around the corner from you. That place is in network and they've got a pool. Is that something that you would want to do? And I might be able to answer your questions off the top of my head. And now I just saved you a phone call and waiting, for customer service. So I would always do that. And what that does though, is it builds trust and you say, look, I am a person, I'm going to be here for you. And so sometimes I hear things like, HMO clients, they're not that loyal. And it's just not true. It's just for me, once I kind of built up that loyalty, once I built that up, and really from the beginning of that, their journey as my client, laying it out there, make me your first call. You kind of become that first call for them. So very rarely lost clients. When I left Humana, I had about 1,100 clients on the books. And so I had a very, very large book of business. And to be honest, there are people today and I left now 11 years ago, that still call me regularly, and they'll say, hey, look, I didn't get this, I didn't get that. And so I just answered the question even today, and I'm not getting paid for them. They're not my clients anymore, because when I left Humana, they weren't. So
yeah, you're setting the proper expectations when you're in the home with them, right? Make me your first phone call. Right. But at the same time, I can't do everything for you. But if they start with you as the agent, you're that point of contact. And if you can help them, you absolutely do. But if you can't, you at least you're able to point them in the right direction, and you're still solving the problem for them. Even though you're not directly doing it, you're getting them to the right people that can help them with that. And so setting those expectations, but building that trust. And we say this all the time to our agents. You can't look at this business as a transactional business. This is a relationship business. And if you're able to build strong relationships with your clients, they're going to stick with you. And there's a lot more to that, right? As you start to peel back some of the layers, right, is making you their first phone call is going to lead to a lot more things. And what I mean by that is, hey, every time I call Raul, he answers the phone. And even if he's not able to help me, he gets me connected with the right people. So you're fresh on their mind when it comes to insurance, and they know that they trust you whenever they need help with anything. And so that carries over if they're having conversations with friends and family, or they have friends who are aging in and they're becoming eligible for Medicare. It's no longer, I've got this insurance, you got to go with this insurance. It's, you've got to give Raul a call, and he's my agent, and he's the one who helped me. And it turns into that. And you stack those wins together over time, and you're just plugging away month over month, year over year. Those referrals start to really just come in. And so to your point, right, you had a lot of self-generated business. It's because you were building those relationships with your clients. You weren't just looking at it as a transaction. Let me sign you up and move on to the next, sign you up and move on to the next. And a lot of times people get caught up in that because they're just chasing the dollar. But the reality is, if you're building relationships with these people, not only are you going to get paid for that enrollment, but if you build a true relationship with them and you've built that trust with them, it's going to lead to referrals. Believe me, it's going to lead to referrals.
Yeah, quite a bit. One thing that I would tell you, though, in addition to that and what it does there, the other thing is when you're that person that is on the other line and that's always there for them, what's the likelihood of them stopping and talking to that person that's sitting at Walmart or at the grocery store? Not very likely. And even if they do, they're going to tell them, hey, look, I'm perfectly happy. I've got a great agent that's always there for me. The reality is there's not a lot of agents like that.
Or the mail, right? I get clients who call me all the time. Hey, Oscar, I got this in the mail, and it says something about $1,000 in grocery benefits. They're not calling that number. They're calling me, their agent, and inquiring about that. Or they see that TV commercial and they're wondering, do they qualify for these types of benefits? They're calling me. They're not calling that number. And as an agent, you want them to avoid. You want that to be avoided at all times, because if they're calling those numbers, guess what? Now they're on the phone with the sales agent, and their objective is to make a sale. Yeah. And so they're calling you. You protect yourself.
When in the height of all the Joe Namath commercials, Jimmy Walker commercials that we saw out there, I got a lot of phone calls like, hey, tell me about this. Can I get my money back on this and that? And was able to really, because I'm that first call, and I've trained them to understand that I'm their first call. I was their first call instead of calling a salesperson to find out. Really there's a lot of kind of misleading, those misleading commercials. My clients weren't misled because they called me first. Yeah. So
I think another part to building these strong relationships is being genuine when you're sitting with your clients. Again, you're not looking at it as a transaction, but you've got to be genuine. You've got to be invested in whatever it is that's going on in their life. These are human beings that we're dealing with, and these health insurance plans that we're enrolling them on, these are needs. These are things that they need every single day. And so you want to sit down, you want to listen to what it is that they need, but also, be invested in them a little bit, and be invested in what they have going on in their lives. Because yes, you're there to help them with their Medicare plan, but who knows what other things they've got going on in their life. And so sometimes you might be the only person that they get to talk to that day, and you want to be genuine in everything that you do. You can't just be rushing through that appointment and just saying, okay, I'm here to do business and business only. I don't want to talk about anything else. Let's get to know each other. And that's part of building that strong relationship. And if you're able to do that, that's going to set you apart from other agents that are out in the field.
Yeah. And I would say the last thing, because I feel like we could do a whole podcast just on this, but the last thing that I would touch on here is answer the call or return the call within 24 hours, right? So the very best agents and anyone who's like, no, I'm too busy. No, I know someone who's got around 1,000 clients, somewhere around there, and she's always committed to returning that phone call by the end of the day. Like, even if it's just, hey, I'm on my way home, and she only worked till like 6. So it's not like she's working till 9. She worked till 6, and she would always call everyone by the end of the day and saying, hey, look, I didn't get a chance to get to this, but tomorrow morning I'm going to work on this. And so you've got to return those calls, because it's one thing to say, hey, I want to be your first call, but then never answer at the other end. And it happens. I see it happen a lot where, I get, as for our agency, people will call the agent, and if the agent doesn't return their call in a couple times, guess where they're calling? They're calling our office. Hey, this person, I haven't been able to get a hold of them. So we get those calls, and there's like, well, why don't you just return the call?
Or even worse, they're calling another agent, or they're stopping.
Yeah, that's worst case scenario. You're right. Because it's one thing for them to call here. That's best case scenario, and then we can help get a hold of the agent. But worst case, you're absolutely right. They just found someone else. Yeah. So take care and build strong client relationships. So on to the next of making this year your best yet, is networking and getting involved in the community. Let's talk. You're better at networking than I am. So let's talk some about that.
Building the same way that we're out there building relationships with our clients, I'd say it's no different when you're trying to build some referral sources. You've got to be a credible source, right? If you're going to partner with a PNC agent and a PNC agency, I always kind of put myself in their shoes, right? If one of their clients comes to them with Medicare questions and all they sell is auto and home, I want to be that person that they refer to, but I have to make sure that I deliver as an agent. So I to the point that you were just making, you've got to answer the phone when the calls come through, because it could be a referral coming from that PNC agent that referred to you. But if you're not answering the phone, what's the likelihood of that PNC agent continuing to refer business to you if you're not taking care of their people? Because these are already their clients. These are my clients, right? If I'm the PNC agent and I'm going to refer to a Medicare agent, I need to make sure that agent I'm referring to is going to come through for me. Because if they're not answering their phone, if they don't deliver, the best service, if they're not, you've got to be on your A game as a Medicare agent, and that will get somebody excited to refer business over to you.
Put yourself on the other end of that conversation. And what I mean is you're on the side where you've referred someone over to a PNC agent, and they call you back and they're like, just in passing, by the way, oh gosh, yeah, that agent that you referred to me never called me back. Yeah. I'm like, are you kidding? I would tell you right now, if we have a relationship like that, or we're supposed to be going back and forth, it's not coming your way if you're not going to return my people's phone calls. And it's just regardless. And the same thing for for agents that are part of our agency. Like if I hear all the time that you're not returning calls, because they call our office, then it's not very likely that I'm going to refer, people who call into our office to you. So just you've got to return phone calls. That's in whether it's your customer or whether it's the networking clients, just return calls. So
yeah, I think carrying yourself as a professional at all times is important to me. I kind of have a personal standard with myself, and so whenever I'm out and about, I make sure that even if I'm doing something that's not work related, I'm still going to carry myself as a professional. I'm not going to say, okay, once the Medicare suit, the Medicare attire is off, I turn into a completely different person. That's not what I do. And so when I'm out in public places, because the reality is sometimes when I'm networking, I'm not doing it in a work setting. I might just be out, at a basketball game. We've got the San Antonio Spurs, right? I might meet some people out there where we're out and I'm wearing my Spurs jersey or whatever it may be, where you're in a casual setting. It's not a work event, but the reality is you may run into some people who could turn into a referral source. And so you want to carry yourself as a professional, right? I'm not going to the Spurs games and getting, drunk and saying things that I probably wouldn't say if I was sober. Again, you want to have that mindset. And so I hold myself to that standard. And
that's a good one.
And I truly believe that has been a huge factor in my success, because I do that. I carry myself like a professional at all times. And so I would challenge you to do the same.
Yeah, I'm glad that, and I'm like I could go off on a whole podcast on this one.
Do it.
But we will, because man, that's really important, and I see it a lot in this business. In just even kind of thinking about how a lot of times we get together with a provider group and they'll invite us out to things, and then you've always got those people who maybe drink a little too much at these events, and how are they looking to other agencies, but more importantly, because on the subject of the networking here, is to the provider groups or to that doctor. Like just think about it. If you're acting drunk, I can't even think of a word, but like if you're clearly drunk and belligerent as you're out there, what's the likelihood of a doctor referring that individual to you? Because the way that I view someone when they're drunk is like, oh, that's really the way they are, right? That's who they are, because your true colors really come out. Yeah, there's the old saying,
the truth comes out when you're drunk, right?
Right. So with respect to that, like, it just really kind of control yourself when it comes to that. And then if you are one of those people that tends to, what's the word, lightweight, like, who's a lightweight in drinking, maybe drink at home. Maybe don't drink in a public setting where you're gonna honestly make a fool of yourself. It's just the truth. So I always do that for our employees. Also, I always remind people before, like, hey, don't forget. Even if you're not working, there's when I was at Humana, I was younger and less mature at the time, but I remember talking with a manager, and we were getting personal, and it was myself, another agent, and him, and we're all just we're drinking and having a good time, and we started asking him questions that were probably inappropriate, like just not the right conversation, and he stopped us and he was like, I'm going to be honest with you guys, like, I understand, I'm old enough to know now that even when I'm not working, I'm still working, so we're not going to continue this conversation. And I was like, oh man, I was, these are things that you learn by the time, hopefully when you get older, that you understand that what's appropriate and what's not. So any other tips on?
Yeah, one other piece that I'll throw out there is when you're trying to network and you're going out and creating relationships with others, I think it's important to do it more than just once. So if you meet somebody, if you connect with them, let's just say you are out at an event that is for work, and you meet somebody and you exchange business cards, for example, it might not be a bad idea to just follow up with an email. Hey Bob, it was very nice meeting you at the event the other night. I look forward to seeing you again. Cheers or whatnot, and just standing out. It's a small thing that you're doing, but it's going to stand out because Bob's going to look at his inbox and say, oh look, there's Oscar. I met him at the event last week. Very cool of him to follow up. I know there's a provider group that we work with here locally, and they're in different parts of Texas and in other states. Well, there was somebody who was visiting from another city here in San Antonio, and so I saw that he was not talking to a whole lot of people. You could tell he wasn't from here. So I took it upon myself to say, okay, I'm going to go introduce myself to this individual just to kind of make him feel a little bit more comfortable, because that's just who I am, right? I always want to make people feel comfortable in any setting. And so I went and I spoke with him, and it turns out that's when I learned that he was from another city, and we've got agents there. And I thought, okay, well, maybe I can connect this person with the agents that we have out there in that city, and that helps build a relationship. And so, and he really appreciated that, just because, again, he was there not talking to anybody. I went and had a conversation with him, and then I sent him an email about a week later, and I saw him again a few months later, and he remembered me, and he says, "Hey, Oscar, it's so good to see you. You know, how's everything going?" I think I saw him before AEP, and then I probably saw him again after AEP, and so that was helpful, and it turned out to be helpful because I was able to connect him with some of our agents out there, and it, you know, when they needed some resources, he was there to help us out.
Yeah, you know, I want to just side note here and talk about the fact that, or what your reason for going and talking to him was. It wasn't to hopefully build something in another market. It wasn't to hopefully, it was, you saw a guy, he looked a little maybe awkward, maybe like uncomfortable, lonely, whatever it is. And you're like, let me go and warm this guy up and just, you know, like just engage him for the sake of, you just wanted to do what was right. And I think that there's a lot that goes with that, and a lot that agents and people in general can learn. Like especially if you go out there and you do things with the right heart, ultimately it ends up paying you back, but make sure that you have the right heart about it. Like, it's about going in and just warming up to people, and you know, you see someone who's clearly uncomfortable, go and help that situation out a little bit. So I think that's real cool.
I'm very much an extrovert, right? So that's easy for me. But for other people, some who might be in this room, right?
I'm an extrovert.
Are you?
Yeah.
So you don't. So well, if you're an introvert, and if you feel like that's not really my thing, again, if you're in this business, you've got to go out and have conversations with people, and you've got to be willing to do those things. So if you're listening and you say, well, that's not me, that's not who I am, I'm not an extroverted individual, I challenge you to go and be a little bit extroverted.
Let's talk about that for a minute. Yeah. So my wife is an extreme introvert. She doesn't really care to be around people. But when she's out, you would never know that. Like, she's very good with people. You don't have to, because like people get caught, and I'm like, oh, I'm this person, right? No, I'm an introvert. I took a test. It says I'm an introvert. So now I'm going to just sit here and just kind of be quiet. You don't have to be that way. Being an introvert versus being an extrovert is really how people get energy. Where does your energy come from? So at the end of hanging out and talking with people, you feel energized. You feel good. Like you're happy you spent some time with people. My wife, on the other hand, gets really tired and really sleepy, and she's like, man, I'm ready to go and be alone now. And that doesn't, just because you're one or the other doesn't mean you have to be socially awkward. And I just, like, it's a soapbox, but we can all learn how to communicate with people and learn how to not just be socially awkward. There's a difference between an introvert and being socially awkward, which brings me to my next point, to the last one here, is reading. And so there's a lot of books that I would encourage everybody, if this is going to be your best year ever. I have a goal for myself this year to read 24 books. Really, that's just a book every other week, right? Just two books a month is my goal. But so the way that I'm doing it, and this is just for myself, and everybody can have their own way of doing this, but what I'm challenging myself to do is read one business book and then one spiritual book. And so that could be, the business side of it could be something to do with, I have 5 books that we've kind of talked together about, but there's a book called Never Eat Alone that could really help with that, and also How to Win Friends and Influence People. Because again, I just want to encourage you, just because you're not naturally great with people, or because you naturally kind of feel like being alone, does not mean that you have to be socially awkward. I knew a guy that kind of just fell into that. It's like an identity. I'm an introvert, and so I'm just going to be socially awkward. But I went and talked to him. I was like, hey man, great job today at such and such. He's like, thank you. And that was it. It's so awkward. You don't have to be awkward because you're an introvert. So I just want to put that out there. What I encourage you to do is, if you are socially awkward, there's books out there that can help with that, which is How to Win Friends and Influence People. It's an old book, like 90 years old, but I highly recommend that book to anyone. If you haven't read it, especially if you're not great with people automatically, you can fix that. And, just because a lot of people, they get caught up in, since I'm antisocial, since I'm an introvert, I'm going to become antisocial and just kind of, put people in that situation. You don't have to do that. How to Win Friends and Influence People. And then Never Eat Alone is another one. Was there another one on with people that we were going to? Okay, that was it.
So, no.
Okay, and so again, what I would encourage you to do is, again, how I believe that I've become successful is with the amount of reading that I've done, and so I would encourage everybody to do that. So the books that we probably read last year, also The Power of One More, I think is a really good book. Yeah. Ed Milet. Yeah, and then Start with Why. Is another really good book. I was a big fan of it. Did you read it, right?
I read it.
Yeah. And I would highly recommend that book. If we're looking at being successful in this business, you have to start with the reason that you want to be successful, and can't just be money motivated. You can't, money is good to motivate you, but there's got to be some heart behind it. And so Start with Why is a real good book to help you figure out the reason that you do what you do.
Yeah.
Right.
I'm an audiobook guy. I know. So if you don't have, a lot of times for a couple of reasons, right? I never really have been huge. I wasn't really big on reading when I was younger, but weirdly enough, after college is when I started actually reading physical books. But as I've gotten busier now, we've got 2 young kids, right? I could make an excuse and say, I don't have the time to read because we're so busy, between work and between home. I've decided, okay, I'm going to go with audiobooks. And so instead of listening to music, now I tune into these audiobooks on my drive to work, or maybe during a workout. Instead of listening to music, I'm on Audible listening to these books via audiobook.
And you can sign up for Audible. And just get a monthly subscription, right? One credit a month to download a book, and it's like $10 a month. Yeah. And so highly recommend that. I used to read a lot of books, and then I got to a place where when we had kids, it was a struggle to actually sit down and read a book. And now I'm back to reading actual books, and actually I'm actually listening to a book and reading a book at the same time right now, and it's just, I think there's a lot of value in it. I find that I listen better when I read versus listening to the book. A lot of times, like if I'm doing it while I'm listening to an Audible while I'm working out, I'm like halfway through, I started realizing that I was just thinking about random things.
I just missed the last 2 minutes.
Yeah. And so I find myself hitting the rewind button quite often, but definitely it's better than nothing, right? Yeah. Like that's what it kind of comes down to is if I want to be the most successful person that I can be, then I'm going to do all of these things. I want to read. I want to, like, that's my goal. Like, ultimately in life is, and I always tell people, my goal is to be better than I was last year. My competition is me. And because I always tell people, what if I was the same business person that I was when I left Humana, 11 years ago? We wouldn't, our company wouldn't be as big as it is. But if you continue to grow by reading books and just learning from, I always talk about learning from other people's experiences and mistakes, so that way you're not having to go through them yourselves. That's where all these books kind of come from. So definitely recommend that. And really all the things, our hope is that you would have the best year ever for yourself in your business, but also even in your personal life. So any other thoughts before we wrap up?
That's all I got for today.
All right. Well, it's going to be a great year, and feel free to reach out to us. Any kind of questions that you have, feel free to engage with our social media, but also go on to, and it's been really cool to see people going to YouTube and Facebook and reaching out to us. You're welcome to continue to do that. We'll answer any questions that you have. So until next time, we'll see you next week.